In my wedding talk last week to a 24-year-old bride and groom who met in our early learning center as babies, true story, I quoted from a book that they and many of you know. It's entitled, "Everything I Need to Know I Learned in Kindergarten." Is it also possible that when a Jewish boy or girl reaches bar or bat mitzvah age, 13, that he or she has already learned the key lessons of life and precepts of Judaism which get unlearned in adulthood? Now, why do I ask that question? I've been reflecting on that idea this week because on this very Shabbat, over 40 years ago, the first Shabbat in 1976, with the same Torah portion, Va'era, I became a Bar-Mitzvah. Va'era means, and God appeared. From the opening verses in Exodus 6, God spoke to Moses and said to him, Va'era, I am God who appeared to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob as El Shaddai. That's why you got the shin up there on the ark. But I did not make myself known to them by the name Adonai, Yud-He-Vav-He. What does this mean? In the ancient Near East, the names of gods were associated with their nature and function. So to say, I did not make myself known to those first ancestors as Yud-He-Vav-He, the commentators say, is to state that the patriarchs did not experience the attributes associated with the name Adonai, that power, which you all know because we're in the Passover story, displayed in freeing the Jewish people from slavery. With the advent of Moses, God makes the divine known to future generations in a different way as the name El Shaddai now becomes obsolete this week. Back to me as a 13-year-old versus me today as a 50-something. Even as a young child, I caught the notion that God appears through love and doing good, not through fear and doing wrong. Whether the wrong was my own selfishness or the injustices I began to grasp, like when I lost my 7th grade tennis scholarship at a Jacksonville prep school and entered 8th grade in a public school that rocked my world and understanding of what other children my age did not have. From food in the cafeteria at lunchtime to a loving father, my own dad, who bailed me out when another physically stronger child with anger issues and an obvious tinge of jealousy picked a fight with me on the basketball court. He won the fight. My father, though, refused to let the principal hit me with paddle swats for fighting back, while the other 8th grade student, who did not even have basic family support like I had, no parents showed up, he took swats while I took detention. And I pray that that classmate at DuPont Junior High School found support and escaped whatever trauma and insecurities caused him to hit me. But even back then in the 1970s, before I ever mastered Hebrew texts, went to college, lived in Israel, did grad school and rabbinical school, I sensed that God appeared in the love and the good, not in the fear or fanaticism. Amos Oz, arguably Israel's most celebrated author, dedicated his last book. It's entitled Dear Zealots, Letter from a Divided Land. He dedicated the book to his 4 grandchildren, all 20-somethings living in Israel. Amos Oz, who fought in all of Israel's major wars, he died in recent days, and he was asked in his last interview why he changed from being a self-described Zionist nationalist fanatic to a living embodiment of Elvis's song, "Walk a Mile in My Shoes." He spoke of a friendship he struck before his own bar-mitzvah with a British policeman before the establishment of the State of Israel. That British policeman asked him these questions. If I were a Palestinian Arab whose family lived here for many, many generations, how would I feel about the influx of Jews armed with the Bible and claiming exclusive rights to the land? How would I feel, he continued, if I were British, someone who shed his blood in order to beat Hitler and now is being labeled by militant Israelis as a continuation of the Nazis? The gross syndrome of the 21st century, Amos Oz believes, following 9/11, is the wrong assumption that fanaticism has to do with only one people, the Arab world or the Middle East. Instead, in his book, Oz describes a certain fanatic gene which may exist in almost every one of us. That doesn't mean that every one of us is a fanatic, but that we should be aware of a certain fanatic potential in every one of us. Israel, Amos Oz contends, is both more than and less than what his parents and their parents dreamed of. It is less than, he said, because, and I quote Amos Oz, nobody, not even in their wildest dreams 70 years ago, could have imagined that there would ever be not just Muslim fanatics, but Israeli fanatics who would burn alive an entire innocent Palestinian family in their home on the West Bank. On the other hand, Oz said, nobody dreamt when he was a boy, a little baby, that in his lifetime there would be 6.5 million Jews in Israel, half of the Jewish people. Israel is a dream come true, he closes his final interview with. And as a dream come true, it is flawed, very flawed, and sometimes dangerously flawed or painfully flawed. But this is in the nature of dreams, not necessarily in the nature of Israel. What draws me to Amos Oz is the same non-fanatical nature that draws me to Celebrate Mercy, the Muslim not-for-profit organization with only three full-time staffers that's raised $400,000 for Jewish cemeteries, synagogues, and a Holocaust memorial. This organization repaired 100 Jewish headstones overturned in St. Louis and helped victims of the Pittsburgh shooting and their families. For us, I quote, this Muslim director said, this is about our shared humanity. We can differ politically, we can differ on big issues, but humanity comes first. When we wanted to raise funds for the Jewish cemeteries and now for the victims, we do not ask about the victims' politics or their stance on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. We don't care about that. We care about the fact that everyone deserves to rest in peace. And no one should be afraid in a place of worship. So what I believed about God on this Sabbath of my Bar-Mitzvah 40 years ago, but never articulated, I still believe today. God appears in love, not fear. God appears in friends and foes. God appears in the honest striving for goodness, not in the selfish striving to be right or for one's own gain. In this week's Torah portion, my friends, Va'era, a God of only might, El Shaddai, evolves into a God who lets trapped people go free, Adonai. A God who hears the groaning of our ancestors and the innermost recesses of our hearts. An ethically optimistic God whom Judaism places faith in because we contend as Jews that justice, goodness, love, and light will prevail, as Rabbi Bowman alluded to earlier, over whatever moments of darkness we face. May each of us come to see Va'era, that God of justice, goodness, love, and light. May it appear in your lives throughout the year ahead. Amen.